she at? Where's she at? Hello? There you are.
Hi.
I was like, wait a minute, where'd she go? I'm still, I wouldn't say I'm the most tech savvy person out there, but I can admit that.
How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Now, what do you prefer to be called?
You can call me Lulu if you want. It's just
But
easier.
it is Lucia.
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure. I like to call people by the name that they prefer to be called by, so just wanted to check. So it's very nice to meet you. Since it's just me and you right now, I would like to get to know you a little. So if you want to just share a little bit of your background so I know what your experience with yoga.
Okay, I mean, when I was young, I was a dancer. So I was a contemporary dancer. So I was mainly doing theater dance or improvisation, these kind of things, like modern methodologies. But I also had, of course, like ballet and modern dance. Then I left it for yoga because when I went after school, I went to university and I just realized that it was too competitive for me, the environment of the dance. And I don't know, I was not feeling comfortable. So I stopped for a couple of years. I didn't want to move anymore. And then I found yoga. And I started about 10 years ago.
Nice.
I was very curious about everything, more or less. So I was also poor more than now because I was a student. So when I moved to the countries I've been, I was looking always for this kind of offers, like, you know, first month or I don't know, a trial day. So I did a lot, I mean. And then I arrived to Vinyasa. So I'm doing Vinyasa since the last 3 years. And I also became a Karma Yogi in a studio here in Amsterdam since 2 years. So I was helping out the studio. And when we had a lockdown, I just was looking around the internet because I was supposed to do my training for the 200 hours. And I knew I could not do it anymore here because my school here was not doing it anymore. It was just postponing it. And I found Gypsy yoga school. So I did the course with Courtney and I finished in June.
Nice.
And then, and it was everything very fast actually, because then after this, I told this to the owner of the studio. I was helping out for 2 years and she wanted to have an audition with me and she immediately gave me a class. So now I'm also having classes there.
Did I lose her? Oh, I lost her. Come back, Lulu.
I hear you. Oh, yeah.
I was like, ah! All right, so I heard that you basically got your training in June and then it kind of cut out after that.
Yeah, after that, basically, the owner of my studio got to know that I was a teacher. And then she was like proposing me to have an audition and now I have a class.
Yes, that's what I love to hear, because I'm always a big proponent that after you do your training, you got to get right in there, because people like sometimes hesitate or they're like, oh, I'm not good enough. And I'm like, you just spent all this time taking all of that in. That's like someone saying they got a college degree and then they're like, oh, I'm not going to get a job in that field though. Okay, well, I mean, everybody do, but you know, to have that kind of focus and to have a support group like that is amazing. So that's awesome. I am also an ex-dancer, so that's why I got excited, because I was like, yeah. So we actually, like, more than not, a lot of the yoga crowd ends up being gymnastics and dance teachers, and people ask me why, and I'm like, oh, the hyperextension in my legs from dancing all those years and things like that. I said, I just needed someone to make me aware. And when I started going to yoga and they were like, don't lock your knees, but don't also hyperextend, and I was like, because, you know, in dance, like, they put you out there and then they're like, all right, now go. And you're like, okay. So,
yes.
You know, you put on your limits and things like that. And, you know, I'm all about pushing to your limits to get there, but not beyond them. And I feel like a lot of people, and that's kind of what ties back into the Yin Yoga. So a little bit about me, I have also been in this field for over 10 years. Meditation, energy work, crystals. I am like the little energy guru, as people like to call me.
Nice.
But I basically had a injury in my arm and I wasn't able to use it for years. So I had a thing where they cut into my body and there was a nerve tumor and they cut and took care of my left arm and told me I was never going to be able to use it again. Well, I decided.
I see you can now.
It's like, yeah. I mean, I will never have full function back because I'm completely missing my my bicep over here and things like, or not my bicep, sorry, my tricep, but not my tricep, my deltoid. Woo!
Okay.
Earlier. Sorry, I was like, I'll get to it. I was just talking rotator cuff with someone in the outside, so. But basically, I didn't want to think that I had to give up on my dream because like I was using my hands to like work with people and stuff, and I was like, what is happening? I discovered Yin Yoga. And the way I did that was I was in massage school and we ended up doing shiatsu. And that was one of our courses. So I started learning about Chinese medicine and I could not get enough of it. I was like, this just makes sense. It's basically very closely related to Ayurveda, just in a different culture. It's just the way that they label things. So, you know, and the way that they make products or how they like get your stuff together. So with me, the Chinese medicine started working because she was the first person I went and I started talking to this actual Chinese medicine doctor and she looked at me and she goes, what's wrong? And I looked at her and I was like, and she goes, absolutely nothing. You just have some energy flow that needs to open back up. And I was like, whoa, because you know, like a doctor will be like, well, what's wrong? Well, here's a pill. Well, here's that. Well, here's that. And she said, in Chinese medicine, this is very important. They do not diagnose. They find where the area of problem is in the body. And they're like, okay, so how do we get energy moving through it again? So with the Yin Yoga, I know you said you're like a vinyasa girl. We all are.
But this doesn't mean I'm not interested. I'm actually very interested because I thought I was a vinyasa girl. But then I tried yin sometimes in the school I was helping out. And I don't know, I just like the way I felt afterwards. It gave me a lot of confidence. And it was somehow shocking for me just doing nothing, basically, to feel so good afterwards. And
Yes.
Also I felt like I could hear myself. I don't know how to explain, but...
No, you are describing the feeling of yin perfectly, because we also have such yang lifestyles. I mean, I can't say that in all of the world right now, because I know a lot of people are still telling to stay indoors and things like that. But just because you're placed into a stillness, if you stay still too long, we all know this. I don't label things, but your vibration's going to go down. So nothing's going to align. You're going to feel down all the time, and nobody needs that. But also, people aren't finding the motivation to feel their fire. So I am a huge proponent of yin, but I'm also a huge proponent of yang, or as we appropriately say it, yang. It's not actually yang. I always say it wrong the first time, so people are like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah. So basically, what we'll get into today, we're going to talk about what Yin Yoga is, how it's defined, some of the modern people that are bringing it to life, things like that. And then we're going to talk about how to set up a Yin practice. And then we'll do a little bit of a workshop with the asana, as much as we can get done in these next couple hours. And then we'll just continue on wherever we leave off tomorrow. So
okay.
The way this works is we're going to record this. So it's going to go into the cloud. Once we're done this, you'll still have access to these videos. This is how I train. I don't do a manual. And I will tell you why. This book that I told you to get is the only book you're ever going to need. I have read every Yin book. I have read every book possible that is related to Yin. And Bernie Clark is like, we all have our guru, right? He's mine. I love him. He basically wrote this book in such a beautiful way that we're going to break it down, but everything I'm going to teach you is either in this, or if it's something that I have created, I will screenshot it and you will get it in the WhatsApp. So I don't want you to be all busy like rushing to take notes or anything, because I feel like it's good to interact this way. And then once we disconnect, you can kind of filter on how you want to do it. I have gotten some feedback. I give you a lot of information and people are like,
I can imagine.
And I go, And that's fine. I said, you want to be like that. That's how you are in a 200 hour as well. I'm just going to throw everything at you. And then basically you can kind of decipher where you want to go with that. So feel free while we're talking, ask questions. I'm still recording this, and this is the recording everybody is going to get. I'll make sure you're a small little version so you don't, if you don't want to be on there, or I can edit it if you'd like me to. But
No,
other
it's
than
okay.
that, I'm going to record everything. Once everything's up in the cloud, you're going to get it sent to you. So basically, like I said, just kind of pay attention, do your thing with me, and then you can just go in here at the end of the night. That's kind of like your homework. And I do include these in hours. So for you to like,
Nice.
so don't think we're doing a full on 60 hours one-on-one, because that's not how it works. You still have to do your homework, like your reading and like journaling for yourself, just to keep you sane through training. No, I'm just kidding. I always tell everybody though, when it goes through Yin, this is definitely a different type of lifestyle, or a different type of style for people to learn. So the main thing about Yin Yoga that I like to explain to everybody, because we've all taken 200-hour training before, Yin Yoga is based off the same asanas, the same. So every asana you are going to hear in Yin Yoga, it is still a hatha pose. So basically, we have kind of gotten away from the original of yoga in this fast-paced vinyasa world. Everybody wants to go, go, go. And as soon as you sit down and people start feeling, they're like, oh no, oh no. And then they want to get up and do stuff again. The reason why Yin Yoga is so important, because this is all about stillness. This is about learning your body. So I have a little tagline that I like to say all the time. It's empower your inner healer. I'm not here to do it. I'm just giving you some guidelines, and I'm giving you the tools. I want you to be able to empower yourself. So when you walk away from here, you have all the tools you need to be able to meditate, do breath work, and be still without your mind going a mile a minute. Not that we all don't have our days, because we do, but in the Yin, it's going to be all seated postures, basically. And it is the same postures that in the beginning of yoga time, in the beginning, there was like 12 seated positions, and that was it. That's all yoga was. It was like be able to sit for a massive amount of time with no thought, and to be able to get into that meditative space, that transcendental space. That's great. Well, in vinyasa, I feel like not everybody, but when you start going fast, we lose our breath sometimes, or you feel the energy come up a lot quicker, and then people will puff and puff, or they'll like decide they need to stop for a second when they should just be able to just slow their breath, feel what they're actually feeling, and move through it. I'm a feeler. I want you to feel it. I'm sorry if you associate it as painful or you're out of breath. It's a reminder to you that you just need to check in. Just need to check in with what you're doing, because the most important part of yoga is being able to connect with your breath and to be able to let everything connect up this way. We don't go to yoga to make our bodies look good, despite what some people think. Now, there's plenty of people that do that. I'm not judging them. So that's what they do their yoga for. But I feel like they're missing such an important part, because basically we want to get into a space where we can feel our own body. Now, I bring this up because sometimes you'll be in a class and you'll feel a ping, right? You feel something when you're in your class and you go, oh, okay, I'll just be a little easier. Okay, well, the next couple times you're a little easier, or whatever it may be. But what ends up happening, unfortunately, is it just pings a little. It's like annoying, annoying. And to me, that's your alert system going, this is about to be an injury. This is about to be an injury. And people just think, oh, that's normal. I'm working my body. Well, in a Yin practice, you're going to be able to sit. You're going to be able to relax. Where did that ping come from? If you raise your leg up a little, does it go away? If I bring it back down, is it going to start going again? It's finding that edge. And a lot of us want to just push to the goal. I'm guilty as well. We all are. But we all want to get to where we want to go. So we push ourselves, or think, if I push a little harder, if I do this more, we're not realizing the actual amount of pressure we're putting on our body. Yin Yoga is defined as the yoga of stress. I know this sounds so funny, but not stress in the mind, stressing your tissues, the ligaments, and the bones. And I'm not saying stretching stressing the bones to the point where they're going to snap. But with yin yoga, we're going to notice most yin yoga teachers should be telling you to find your edge wherever that is and then back off. What I'm noticing a lot with people is they get into yin and they're like, I can put my arms out towards my feet. I can put my stomach all the way down. This is great. Okay, but how much pressure are you going to be feeling? I don't want you feeling like it's a full-on workout when you're in a yin pose, because that's kind of defeating the purpose. That's going to make our bodies actually try to warm the muscles when we're actually trying to stress the tissues, the ligaments, and the bones, because none of that gets worked out in vinyasa. When we're all moving really quick, none of that is getting the chance to relax. So it's finding those times that, I don't know how you guys do gym or if you do PE, physical education, when you guys were in school, but I remember going in and the first thing they would make us do is like these deep, deep stretches before we started anything. And I would always be like, oh, this is weird. But like sometimes you would stretch so deep, it would hurt you. And then you weren't able to continue your practice. But then at the end, they were doing the slow down, let it cool down, when they should have been doing that both times. You got to take the time to warm up your body. But we're all used to, I want it and I want it now, which is nothing wrong with that. But we need to change our mind frame with that. So our lifestyle is basically yang, no matter who you are. You're up going to the store, you're up running around, you're walking your dog, taking out your kids, whatever it may be. We do so much yang or yang that we need the yin. This is why I tell people your practice doesn't always have to be physically straining on your body. You should be able to just do breath work and sweat just as much as if you were doing a vinyasa flow. And when I say this to people, they're like, wait, what? And I say, because the key of yoga is breath. The same thing in yin. So with yin, when it comes to breath work, we're going to tell people to take slow, long, deep breaths, right? And that's just like we would in vinyasa. But they're going to be able to do it because they're not pumping their body as much. So this is also a practice. It's a little easier to teach pranayama to people and being just like visualize, inhale nice and slow. Just to give you a little sideline here, I was the official Gypsy pranayama teacher for a very, very long time. So pranayama is like, just like anatomy and physiology. I just love it. Those are my things. So that's why I link back to yin, because I say with the breath and the stillness, you can still just get as much of a reaction out of your body as if you were doing vinyasa, if you're doing it appropriately. Other thing about yin is that the yang or the yang tissues are the belly of the muscle. So think of any time we're doing something like this, and then it's getting like this, that's our yang muscle. So the one that's real active and keeps going. But the yin part of that muscle is the tendons, the ligaments, and the attachment or into the bone. So when we go into yin, these deeper tissues are able to connect and release. And unfortunately, for most people in the world, knee, elbow, ankles, so any of those attachment or hingy type of areas is where a lot of people tend to have injury. So when people come in and they tell me they have shoulder issues or things like that when they come into yin, the great thing about it is that's great. I can prop you until the day is long. I can use as many props to make you super comfortable, and then you connect with your breath. Once you feel comfortable, you can remove something and then allow yourself to go deeper. Let's see here. Aha. Man, I love talking about this stuff. You can see how excited I get. I'm like spewing fire at you. So I just get really excited.
So you prefer that I do not take notes now. You prefer that I just stay on you.
You are welcome to take notes if you'd like to. Absolutely. But I just say, this is kind of like a flow thing. So it's like good to hear it and then read it and then take notes, or you can take notes now if you don't think you're going to remember something, for sure.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you, girl. I just always tell people that's what I suggest, because that's the best way I learn. So I just like to extend the way that I learn best to others, but we all learn differently. So great thing about yin yoga is that these poses can be held anywhere. I'm even going to say a minute, because I will explain that. From 1 minute up to 20. Now, most people don't know about the 20 minutes because you really have to work your way to get there. Yeah. And you will notice not every yin pose is going to be able to be held for 20 minutes. You're just going to know. So, and in the book, most of it is going to suggest anywhere from 3 to 5, but they will specifically tell you if you should only do 3 for a while and then move up to 5. Certain ones that I say to people is set the goal for 3 minutes and then work your way up to 5. That's something that is a goal for a lot of people because you got to know when you get frustrated. And I say that because my secret favorite thing is when I teach yoga and someone's really into vinyasa and they're like, oh, this is gonna be great, I just lay around. And then I get them in a pose and they're the ones that's sitting down like this and going, and they start breathing. And I'm like, I said, you're shortening your breath. Come up, come out of it. I feel like a lot of people get embarrassed to back off or adjust themselves. And I make sure you are super comfortable in my classroom. So my personality shows that. I'm very goofy. So if I see you acting like kind of strange, I would never make a scene, but I would just come up and be like, stick a bolster under there. Oh, thank you. Sometimes people, actually, all people need permission to relax. That's just the way of the world, unfortunately. A little bit more about yin and yang. I know you have a chart in your 200 hour. Because I know that manual well. You're also going to have a chart in here, but it's going to be the same thing. It's just explaining that yin is more of the coolness, the feminine, the moon, so the chill, the standing still. And then you have the yang, which is going to be the opposite. It's going to be fire, movement, all of that good stuff. But in Yin Yoga, they believe in the way of the Tao. Are you familiar with Taoism at all?
No.
Okay. So Taoism is basically their fancy way of balance. Mm-hmm. So they're saying in the Tao, you want to find your center. So when you're all like this, but you have your, so if you're all young and like you're going like this, they're saying in order to get this to stop, you got to bring this in and up and to the center. So having them both in balance. So if you're going to have an active lifestyle all day, then you need to find the time to take your yin. And for some people who have children, that's even just breathing on the toilet sometimes and shutting the door. This is like, it is a portable practice, it is a movable practice, but it's helping us find that balance in the middle. But
it's this symbol, black and white.
Yes. So the black, it's this one. It looks just like my moon back here.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Then I got it.
Yeah. So, and that's what it's saying. So it has the dark and then it's got the little white dot and then it's got the white with the little dark dot. It's just showing you that like you need both, but you're still going to have a little bit of the other. A lot of people don't like to go to the dark side. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I'm warning you now.
It's okay.
So I always say people, it's okay to go to your dark side because it's not all dark. So it's like you have to find those shadows and you have to find that part of the balance that you need. So all the fancy words are saying is if you're feeling all like this, then you better sit down and breathe. If you're sitting down and breathing and then you feel yourself turning into like a potato, then you might want to get up and move. So this practice really helps you gauge your energy and how to find the balance within. So the little things that we don't even realize. So telling people, well, if you're running around like crazy all day, maybe you should take a day off. And you can see the people who don't want to hear that will go, I can't do that. I can't. And okay, all right. But why don't people like to do that? Is because when you go all the time, some people really, really feel once they become still, and not everybody's comfortable with that. But the Yin Yoga practice is going to allow people to open to that and be more mindful of it. Because if you can sit still and let yourself feel on the deepest level that you're able to feel, you've already won. So everybody wants to empower themselves and be their own healer, but in order to do that, you're going to have to stay still and learn a little. So, learning the bad parts about you, okay? So I don't even like that word. So learning those unbalanced parts about you. So like if someone says something to you and you snap, it's like, whoa, okay? And then you have to stop for a second and be like, I don't know where that came from. That was weird energy. I need a minute, obviously. We're all so scared to say that anymore. But, I have no idea what happened in your day for you to snap like that in a moment. And just like people, when they come into a class, you'll see people walk in huffing and puffing and be like, roll out their mat all loud, slam it down, and you're just like, okay, so we're gonna start this class real chill, because obviously there's a lot of energy up here. And unfortunately, energy spreads. So one concept that I love to tell people, that your energy field is as your arm span all the way out, and then you spin in a circle. So anytime people come into that space, they are in your energy. Now, if you're in someone's space and they're in someone's space, you're literally making a monkey chain of energy. So it's very important when you're in a yin class or a yin mindset, and someone comes in there all razzled and dazzled, we have to know how to go and then walk over and keep our presence like that, no matter how they're feeling or their energy is changing. Because technically, it's one of those things, like yin controls yang, and then yang controls yin. It's gonna, and they're only saying that because you need the other to balance that emotion out. Just let me look at my notes here. One thing I love to talk about. If we stay too long in an unbalanced state in our own body, the universe is going to take care of it. If you no matter how long you try to just push it to the side or say no, this is where unfortunately a lot of people get those injuries and things in their yoga practice, because all the signs are there and we just blow them off. And you don't have to be all, I'm connected one with the universe. If you don't believe in that kind of magic or that kind of mumbo jumbo, that's totally fine. I don't know how everybody feels about those particular things. God, universe, replace it with whatever you feel comfortable with. But all it's saying is you're always going to get what you need, whether you like it or not. So if you keep avoiding something for so long, the universe is finally going to go, okay, I tried to warn you a bunch of times, and now it's time to get serious. And people get very, whoa. And it's like, if you're a young person and you're always on the go, 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 and you keep avoiding slowing down, doing stuff, things will do stuff to help you slow down. An example in my life, I was go, 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 working 18 hours a day, and I sat in my car one day and I was just sitting on my brake, ready to make a left-hand turn, and I was like, man, I need a break. I really do. And a huge tractor trailer hit me from behind. So for me, was that scary? Yes, but it was also a sign where it was like, okay, you better watch your words, girl, needing a break. We don't want to step back into this. We've all had those moments where you keep going and then finally it's like, slam on the brakes, let's turn the page. The only way to fix an unbalanced life is to bring in the opposite. So this is the other part of yin and yang, is spirituality and practicality. Listen, I'm all about signs from the universe. I'm all about listening with that stuff too. But sometimes we have to be practical and realize when it's something that comes out of nowhere and something we brought on to ourselves by ignoring it. So there are definitely spiritual and practical parts of the whole yoga practice, or just being connected in that way. Let me ask, any questions so far?
Are you Italian? I am Italian as well.
That's amazing. Is it all my this?
No. I was just curious because of your name, because I have no question for now concerning the yin.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, no, I most of my lineage is Italian, but I think I have Irish in me as well. But yeah, it's like Italian, and I think I have a little bit of Syrian in there too. We did like a DNA test one time, but yeah.
Nice. By the way, was everything very clear till now?
What's that?
Everything clear till now.
Everything here, there's what?
Everything clear.
Oh, okay. I was like, wait, what? We're good. Everything's clear. Awesome. So, let's see. All right, that's good. That's good. All that. I love this. Okay. So, stability and mobility. Yin Yoga is going to help people with that in a huge way. Because if you think we go into a young practice and we're doing lunges and things like that to prepare ourselves to stand for a long period of time, right? And to empower one leg or the other. When you go into yin, you're able to go deeper and release, like, what's my favorite part of the body? Releasing the hips. Everybody holds stress in their hips, no matter where you want to put it down. So I tell people all the time when they feel unstable or they feel like they're not as mobile, I said, well, then you need to get into some yin to find out where that imbalance is so you can figure it out and then empower that muscle and all around it. Now, you're going to be able to feel that more in a yin practice than a yang, especially because a lot of our yin involves our hamstrings, a lot of people's arch nemesis. It's very hard for people to sit there and stretch the hamstrings for a long period of time. But for me, if you're able to set and then you can release those hamstrings, you're going to be able to strengthen your leg. That's anatomy. So if you can release something, then you're going to be able to strengthen what's around it. If you already have strengthened it, but maybe you're a little wobbly on the inside, well, then we're going to use the strength and back off and maybe lessen on the strength so we can go deeper into the tissue and the ligaments. So let's see here. Yes. So I'm sorry, I have chicken scratch sometimes and I just have to take a second to decipher what I wrote here.
Don't worry.
All right. So when we're younger, this is where the conditioning in the bodies come from. When we're younger, they teach us to build strength. It's go play soccer, kick a ball, throw a ball. Like, they want us to strengthen our body, which is great, but we also need to be mobile. So if you're doing the same action all the time, you're automatically going to tighten up other areas around you. I am obviously fascinated by this because I'm missing my shoulder, but I just had to go in and go, okay, well, this muscle does this function. What other muscles do that? So what can I strengthen to help take part of that missing area? Now, they don't teach us that stuff, you know? I remember my gym teacher used to tell me to walk it off. Yeah, oh, I think I did something to my knee, walk it off. When the appropriate thing would be sit down and stretch your leg out and see what's going on. But this is where a lot of people have a problem because they have the exercise theory in their head. So when they come to yin, they're like, all right, we're exercising. No, same thing with vinyasa. You're not exercising, although it feels like that. It's a movement in meditation. Yin is the same way, but in more stillness. And the way that I always say this is that all forms of exercise share two features in common. First, we must stress the tissues, then we must let the tissues rest. Okay, I get that. So go do this and then go relax. Perfect. What does that sound like? Oh, vinyasa or hatha. So move and move and move, but then make sure you take that shavasana. Nobody cools down anymore. I've been to gyms, I have taught classes, I have had people get up and leave before shavasana. So it's like the integration part of all of this is you do need to let the tissues rest. The same theory when people start running or jogging, they're going to tell you to intermittently bring in walking with it. And then at the end, walk it out at the end. They do that to get your heart rate down and also to give your muscles a break. Because in that slowness at the end is when everybody recognizes, oh, my knee, man, maybe I walked too far. Oh, my ankle's bothering me. So I use that same concept bringing it into the yin practice. Now you're still. Now you're breathing into a spot. Where do you feel it? And then I direct people. Okay, well, if you feel it in that area, let's connect with that area and think why you're feeling it now. And then, of course, once we get into Chinese medicine, we'll probably start that tomorrow, you're going to start to realize how to read people's energy by where their issues are. Now, for most people, it's going to be in the hips. I'm going to tell you straight up. The psoas is just the muscle that gets the worst of it for all of us. The psoas is our stress muscle. Think about it. And also, even in your chest, these muscles end up being tight. And a lot of people cave inward. And, you know, for a lot of people, they say it's because women have a bigger chest or whatever. And I'm like, no, because men do it too. That is also a trauma response, just like the psoas. when we get scared or we do anything we don't want to do, you can see we kind of sink in, the butt goes back, the chest goes in, like we're like almost guarding yourself. Well, we don't want that. We want to be nice and open. We want to get that stuff open. It's going to be super uncomfortable for people even to put a bolster behind their shoulders and open because they've been so tight or doing this all day. So the cool thing about the yin versus the yang is that once you get your muscles warm, you can kind of push yourself. In this, it's like, nope, this is where you're at. You need to stay here. And that's where we lose a lot of people because they have that exercise theory in my head. Well, don't we move a little before I sit still? And I'm going to say no, because I'm going to mention this a million times. You never, ever, ever practice yin yoga after you do vinyasa.
Okay, I'm going to write this down.
Please do. And this is only for one reason and one reason only. It can lead to injury. So when you practice yin, you're going to do it with cool muscles, either right in the morning or in the evening when you're relaxing. So after you've kind of sat and had your day, or right before you start your day, or right before you start your vinyasa. So for me, what I mainly do, I practice yin yoga every day, and I add it into my morning practice. So I'll do my meditation in propped butterfly and reverse butterfly. I'll do that, and then I'll do a few yin poses that I know I need to target. So usually my hamstrings, and I need something to open my shoulders. So I'm on the bolster a lot with my shoulders. Now, once I do that and I have that and I can feel that everything's moving, I can know how my vinyasa practice is going to go. So it's almost like giving you a guideline on how to do your flow. So it's like we all want that creativity to have a practice that is gauged towards something. So, and that's kind of what I do. So I go and I do certain yin poses, or I just do different ones, and then I'm like, ooh, got to work on that external rotation. I start feeling things. So then I make sure my vinyasa or my hatha practice is going to match what my yin practice taught me. And right there, I just balance my body out. And what a great way to start your day, in complete balance. Let's see. This is in your book. This is just a little quote I always like to read. It just says, please remember the important second part of this equation. We must rest. We must. So there's a lot of research proving the importance of stress and rest beyond the developing physical, the strength physically. But it is beyond the scope of this journey to go into it further. So this is all this is saying is that unless you're going to take the time and be still and aware, you're not going to be able to level up. Let's say that, like level up to the next level. You're going to get stuck. Trust me. I have had one of my favorite things I ask in yoga to people is, what asana has gotten you stuck for a long time? And most people will be like, bam, they'll come right out with it. They're like, this is my challenger. And I go, okay. And I say, but where does it challenge you? And people go, I'm like, well, you know the pose, so where are you feeling it that you're feeling it's challenging? Well, I have tight hips. Okay, so are we leaning over in that? And they're like, well, no. And then you can see I can get people thinking that way. This is the beauty of yin. So it's like, where do you feel it? Oh, wait, I'm not sure. And then it's like, okay, so I know both worlds, and now you're going to know both worlds. I feel like knowing yin has tremendously helped me as a teacher, because I tell people all the time, they want to go more. And I'm like, well, if this pose has been challenging you for 3 years and I can take 2 minutes to give you some yin poses to try to figure out where that challenge is coming from, wouldn't you want to do it? And once I say things like that, people are like, well, yeah. And I said, I'm not saying the pose isn't going to challenge you anymore, but it's going to unlock somewhere so we can get through the next one. And that's what we want. So the biggest thing you're going to see in yin yoga, especially in males, and this is an anatomical point as well, people's hips are tighter than tight. So even if people can get on full-on butterfly after doing a vinyasa practice, they're going to sit on the floor to do butterfly, and they're actually going to be shocked because they're used to doing this at the end of a vinyasa, and they can't go past here. They're going to be like, what? Okay, well, this is what happens when you're still and the muscles aren't warm. This is showing you where some tightness is. So it's either in the front or the back of your hips. Now, when someone sits like that and you tell them to get props, it can seem super, I need props? I can get into this pose. I don't need help. We all need help. We all have days. So with someone like that, I would tell them, just take 2 blocks under your knees and like, let's see where it goes from there. And then once you feel it feels good, then release the blocks. It's just that with the yin, we have to be patient with people because people just want the quick fix. This is the world. This is not just yoga. This is everywhere. Everybody wants the quick fix. My favorite is when people ask, I was very well known for my weight loss for a very long time, and everybody asked what I did. And I was like, well, I'll tell you, not sure you're going to do it, because what people want to do is they just want to go to a doctor. They want to take a miracle pill. Now, this is the power of society and thinking that's going to work for them. Well, I'm living proof that that's not true. So for me, I'm not coming from a cocky place, but I also think to everybody, do you need that? Or can we help some other way? And most of the time, just even breathing to help people breathe is going to make their practice tremendously better. But if they're not breathing appropriately, taking long, slow, deep breaths in yin, there might be some challenges. I have seen people do a lot heavier breath work because they get frustrated in a pose. So you're going to notice once you get my uploads of my classes, I am very quiet when I teach. I remind you where your body should be, where it could go, but I mainly check in with your intention and check in with your breath, because that is the most important components of any yin practice or any yoga practice, in my humble opinion. It's just very hard to get people to focus on that when they're moving really quick. Both are awesome though. All right. So the word stress, you're gonna see this all over your yin book. You're gonna see the word stress, stress, stress. And it's not the kind of stress we're thinking of. We're talking stretch versus stress, which is linking back to what I was saying earlier about the vinyasa. So it's like, that's a stretch. We're gonna stretch and we're gonna move and we're gonna like get into a power mode. Now in yin, I'm gonna get you to an edge. And what happens in yin practice, I'm sure this has happened to you or you know somebody, your muscles start shaking if you hit a point and it won't stop. And you're like, okay, I just got to breathe through this. And then you do, and then it just releases. That right there is probably the greatest gift yin yoga could give you, because that is something you most likely could not target in a young type of environment. So when we go into stress and people feel shaking, they're like, oh, what's happening? Well, your ligaments and tendons are finally getting the chance to relax or release. And that's how it comes out physically. It feels strange, but the big thing I tell people all the time, pain is temporary. So if you go into a pose and you feel painful and you go to back out and it's still pain, you got to stop what you're doing. That's it. Call it the day, lay down, something's obviously going on. If it's pain and you adjust yourself and it goes away, that was just a, hey, just want to let you know I'm here. And then you're able to go, okay, that's where it's at. That's where I need to work. So it's not that I give people a whole tutorial before they take my yin class, but if someone is new, I do like to tell them it's a lot of stillness. It's a lot of breath work. You can use as many props as you want. And I'm that teacher that's at the front that I tell everybody, if you need me, all you have to do is put a finger up. You don't have to talk to anybody. You don't have to feel weird or obligated, because most of the time in yin, everybody's staring at the ceiling. Nobody can see you adjusting or moving. So I just tell people to go like that. And then I ask them, like, where is it? And they're like, it's really bothering my hip. And then I can tell them to put a blanket or a block under there or something to catch their knee so the knee's not stressing the hip. These are all things that are going to come in time, but a lot easier knowing your hatha as well, because we obviously go through propping in there too. So the most important thing that we're stressing are the ligaments and the tendons. And ligaments and tendons, forgive me if I'm wrong about this, tendons connect to bones. Yeah, tendons connect to bones, and then you have your ligaments that are going to attach muscle to muscle. So you have all of these important parts, but they're not pliable. So let's think about fascia. I know we talked about fascia before. So in your anatomy, you learned about the sheath of what they call, I wouldn't say it's muscle, but it's a sheath that goes through your whole body, and it's all interconnected. So in a whole interweb, your organs are in it, everything. So it's this whole interconnection. So when we go to have some area that's tight, it's tight here, it's gonna start, whatever's over here, it's gonna start pulling towards that. Or if it's tight up here, I always say this, people are like, oh, I have a neck problem. And I'm like, it's your low back. And they'll look at me and go, I do have low back problems. And I said, yes, because it starts somewhere. And then once it reaches another place, it means that you've ignored it for so long, your fascia started pulling, which meant your muscles started going a little bit, which meant your tendons and ligaments started pulling in a different direction. Even a fingertip can throw your whole body off. So that's why it's super important for people to know these type of things. Like, you don't want to stress something that feels worse. We got to ease into it. Let's see here. Aha. So think about your ligaments as basically pieces of plastic. They're not friendly. They don't want to move. And that's why the muscles are more of the elastic. So it's like giving yourself that kind of visualization. So if someone gets a real big muscle and they just keep working, I know you've seen this. So bodybuilders will work all their muscles, and then all of a sudden it's a, and that's how they walk. Well, is that normal? I'm gonna say no if I look at you from the side, because I can tell that the front gate of you is already going like this. You're already sticking out and you're doing this thing, but now you're creating a gap in your back and your mid-back. And you can see that a lot of these guys don't have the benefit of knowing bandhas. It still works in yin. You still want to lock those things up so our body doesn't turn into a form like that. It's very hard for people to lock their bandhas because they do have a lot of tight muscles. My favorite is teaching the pelvic floor to people. And I say, pull it up. And they're like, ooh, and you can see them. They're like struggling a little. They go back and forth. Well, it's uncomfortable. So now we have to figure out how to release that low back. Most of this stuff is going to come from your tendon and ligaments. So that's our main focus. There is not going to be much yang or yang style in yin, except when we do our breathers, but we'll get into that in asana. So original yin. So we're going to say it's been practiced for almost 4,000 years, just like hatha, all that other stuff, but in a different sense. So I'm not going to say it originated in China. It's just that Chinese medicine got related to this, and someone took it and was like, yes, Chinese medicine, the stillness, the yin and the yang, it all works. So they decided that most of the people that were doing this was under that practice. So it was more in the China area. I will say that when they learned a lot of this stuff. So a lot of their gurus they talk about or things like that are mainly related to the Buddha, like any kind of Buddha. Just like if it was, as I'm staring at her, Lakshmi or anybody like that. So it's just working with a certain type of culture. So the whole intention of hatha yoga is to be able to make you sit for long periods of time. So right there, you're going, huh, interesting. So I can sit for long periods of time, not behind a desk, not sitting in a chair watching TV. That is not what they're talking about. They're talking about sitting with intention. Everything should be intentional throughout your day. Everything. How you eat, your plans. And I'm not saying you got to be a planner, but have an intention behind everything. Even if it's just to be love and light behind the closed door everywhere you go. So just being love and light no matter what comes at me. I can just put up my boundary and I'm good. My boundary. Yeah, my boundary. I almost said wall. That is not appropriate. Don't put up walls. We don't need that. So Sitting for long periods of time is just a yin exercise. So basically they took what they learned, what the original poses were and why they wanted to sit so long was in meditation. Now someone just took this, related it to the Chinese medicine lines in the body. They look just like the Ayurveda lines, a little less messy than Ayurveda. I will tell you, Courtney knows this, I am not an Ayurveda fan.
It's okay, don't worry.
So I appreciate it. I think it's cool. But I think Chinese medicine, if you take the time to actually read it, it just makes more logical sense to me. Because sometimes with Ayurveda, they'll say one thing and then I'll see something later and I'm like, okay, I get that there's conflicting information everywhere, but I want to know an answer. I want to be able to get there. So with this yin, most of these poses are going to have an energetic meridian that is getting released or opened. So yin yoga is about the energetic pathways. Once the energetic pathways open, then your muscles can release, the tendons can release. Because if you think about it, even not energetically, just think of it. Your body says, hi, there's a bunch of congestion right here in this part of the body. And we think, okay, well, we need to move it out. Well, the only way to move that out is to get that ball of energy to release. So we got to find a way to either breathe with intention into that space, take our practice to that space, knowing that's the space we need to release. But yeah. Sorry, I thought I missed something.
Don't worry.
I don't know why I say sorry all the time. I'm not Canadian. my friend's boyfriend was here the other day and he kept going, sorry. I was like, are you Canadian? He was like, how did you know? It's like, I used to be like that. And everybody asked if I was Canadian when I lived in Costa Rica because I apologized for everything.
Well, don't do it.
Yeah, right? I'm like, because I'm really not sorry. I just like, that's just my reaction for some reason. Oh man. So, okay. So, and basically with Yin Yoga, they do mention the Hatha Paprika. I say that every time. Prada Pakita? I forget how to say it. You'll know.
Yes.
Jordy will laugh once you watch this. This is for you, girl. Sanskrit has never been my thing. So, Hatha Yoga was written around 1350 CE. So they're saying after Christ. But basically, it was written by a Swami. That's great. This Swami also had stories in there, things of poses. But we're going to talk about what these guys thought about a very, very long time ago, like thousands of years ago. We have to find a way to integrate that into the world now. Because I know a lot of people read this and they're like, well, how am I supposed to do that? I can't just go live in a cave forever. And I'm like, that's what they could do back then. You have to learn that you can be both. You can be a boss lady that goes and works a multi-million-dollar business and still be a yogi. You can still find your time because at the end of the day, it's just self-care. It's self-love. It's filling your cup up so you don't get burned out helping others being able to do that. So just so we're aware, and we both know this, but yin is obviously not an Ayurvedic word. It is all about the Chinese. But the Chinese difference is that you're going to hear a lot of elements and meridians. So we have a few modern yinsters that basically teach right now. Bertie Clark is obviously my guy. I love him. But there's also Paul Grilly and Paulie Zink. And there's another girl named Sarah Powers. So Sarah Powers was one of the people where she used to call it Taoist yoga, but then someone saw what she was practicing and he had yin yoga. So she went to study with them and she realized, oh my gosh, we're basically doing the same thing, but you're really integrating Chinese medicine. And he was like, yes, I think people should be aware of what we're energetically opening in the body. So Sarah basically went to, I think she was with Paul Grilly. So that was her teacher that she went to. Bertie Clark went to Paulie Zink. So everybody had their own guru, but now they all kind of do their own thing, but work together. They really like working and integrating together. So like, and a great resource is Bertie Clark, his website. he's got free information on there all the time, like things that he updates, things that he's taken out of his books, things that he decided is not yin anymore, and he wants you to know why. He stays very up to date on his stuff. Same with Paul Gurley. So like those two kind of work together to get this into a modern day type of practice. So they also had long discussions on what was yin friendly and what was not, because a lot of people I've seen, I don't know about you, one big thing I'm seeing in the yin world right now is people are loving to do that shoulder stretch where they lay on their shoulder and like go down like this. There are so many people that have neck and shoulder injuries. You tell someone to even do that for hatha, you can see some people be like, mm-mm. So my big thing is that we really don't want to stress the shoulders, because let's be real, everybody stresses them enough. That is the upper body with every driving, texting. That's all we do is stress this upper body. That's why the hips usually go off. So it's finding those channels of what connects. Now, Paulie Zink actually went and he studied overseas. So he went out there, he went to learn Chinese medicine, he went straight into the culture and kind of learned more about Taoism. Then Paul Gurley kind of did the same thing, but he went out and he met Hiroshima Motoyama. I actually do Japanese better than Sanskrit. But Dr. Motoyama had a PhD degree in philosophy and psychology, and he was also a yogi. So he got into studying with him because he was trying to integrate the spirit world with the physical world. And that's kind of what Chinese medicine does. So it's like, you don't have to believe in the spiritual world, but you're going to be surprised that we're using this energy medicine. I tell you what to do, and then you're going to be like, oh. And it's like, but there's a map. So to people, and I was one of those students in the beginning that when I went to learn Reiki, the lady was like, you just have to trust it. And I was like, okay, well, show me. Like, I need to see something. Like, you can't just tell me to like trust. I have a very scientific brain. So for me, I think this is why a lot of people come to me for energy work, because if you don't believe in it, I can find something science to relate to it. And I think that's a great way to do this. And that's basically what Paul Gurley does with Chinese medicine. So he says, even just seeing someone walk in and their neck's kind of kinked like this, he's right there. You're blocking off some kind of energy flow right here. So then he automatically look and he'll be like, oh, that's the lung meridian. And then he'll ask, like, have you been going through grief lately? And someone will be like, oh my God, I just lost somebody. How did you know that? He literally just looked at your body, knew what energetic line was looking congested, and then I give you the map. It'll literally say lung meridian is associated to this. So a lot of people start realizing, oh, this is emotionally related too. Yes. I think a lot of people forget that. You can fix the physical as much as you want, but if you're not fixing up here, not going to work. So, he basically combined the knowledge and used anatomy and then the Taoist theory. So that's how he became well known in the Yin Yoga world. So he went over and they went and learned with the actual people that understand Chinese medicine. And yes, in Japan, they do kind of practice it as well. It's not like it's very well known. I'm sure they don't call it Chinese medicine there, but it's Japan is where Reiki originated. That's what they say. So they all have that same energetic map that they like to believe that works the body. They will tell you, Chinese, Japanese will go, I have cancer. And they'll go, no, you have a toxicity in your body and we need to remove it. They think of it like as soon as you label it and own it, in the Chinese medicine world, they feel like you're already gone. It's the good patient syndrome. And it's just like someone tells you, okay, well, you're just going to have to be on this for the rest of your life. And they go, okay. Well, they don't want that. In Chinese medicine, like if someone walked into my classroom and they're like, you know, I battle depression, I'm like, we all have our low vibrations that follow us around. And don't say my depression. You're going to talk about it, say the depression. Because once you say my or mine, you're owning it. So it's like, I have anxiety, my anxiety. Well, it's going, here I am. Yeah, I'm yours. That's right. I'm going to hang out with you all day. Same thing with depression. It's that mind. So linking back to yoga, going down the rabbit hole, sit still and get your thoughts together. Sometimes you got to go down, but you got to find your way to pull back up. So in Chinese medicine as well, if you're out of balance in one meridian, there's another meridian we can work on to bring the balance in. So there's still the way that the 5 elements work in Chinese medicine is something will fire something up and something will cool something down. So the way that that works. So if you know someone is having a really hard time, grief, lungs, and all of that stuff, it's also related to the fall. So if you think fall, maybe someone needs some spring in their life. So the feeling of spring, instead of feeling like fall where everything's falling down or whatever people want to say about different seasons. But knowing these things are going to be able to help you work with the seasons as well. There's a huge thing in Chinese medicine that I will touch on briefly because Sarah Powers actually talks about this in one of her interviews. She said, you are supposed to hibernate during winter. End of story. So people that live in environments in the wintertime that are nice out and that you can go out surfing, fishing, you can be out in the sun all day. She even says, she's like, that's great that you live in a place like that, but you notice most places that have seasons that match with it, almost the season makes them do that. So it's like in wintertime where I live, it snows all the time and it's frigid cold. So I do hibernate. I do what I'm supposed to do. I eat more, you know, maybe even fatten up a little. I mean, that's what everybody does in hibernation. But then right after winter, we go into spring. So it's like you let everything hibernate and then you can let everything go. And then all of a sudden it's springtime, renewal, birth. You should be eating with the seasons as well. This also helps. So she went into that whole thing about, you know, people say that you should go with the seasons. I have a crystal healer teacher. She tells everybody she takes 3 months off in the year, always in wintertime. It's honoring your body and what you need to do. So I just like to bring that up because I like that. What's the next one? How are we doing? We doing all right so far?
Yes.
Excellent. All right, next thing. All right. So we did touch base on this a little, but we're going to talk about it a little bit more. So how to practice and when to practice yin. So we'll go more into detail about this. So how we practice is much more important than when, obviously, always. The beautiful thing about yin yoga, it's portable, you know, so it's not like you have to get your yoga mat down. You don't need your rag for when you're sweating and things like that. You can practice yin yoga anywhere. So I was the famous yogi for a while that was practicing yin in airports all the time because delayed flights gets everybody a little in a tizzy. Well, so I would just go sit butterfly style, or I would do shoelace, and I would sit against a wall because I didn't have any props with me, or I would use my book bag as prop. So it's like one of the practices you can do anywhere. So it's like people don't even know I'm practicing yin most of the time because people see how open my hips are and how flexible my legs are. But I also sit with intention. So like right now, I've gone into 3 or 4 different yin poses and I watch the clock and I'm like, it's been 5 minutes, switch it. And is it an intentional practice right now? Not. So it's one of those things that when you're out somewhere or you need to get away, that's what you want to do. So it's just sit somewhere and breathe. Know when you need to remove yourself from the situation. You can practice it anywhere. It's not one of those things where you're going to practice and people are probably going to be like, oh, you do yoga? They'll probably be like, man, that girl's just sitting there with intention. Oh, that is yoga, but I'm not just like powering myself up today. So when you go to do this, you just want to find, obviously, a nice place. So how to practice? Okay, well, the how isn't as much as the when. So it's like however you want, with props, in a public space, in your own bedroom, whatever it may be. But when you practice is the most important. Like I told you, I'm going to repeat this madly, and it's only because I have seen the injuries happen. I've seen people keep going and going and going, and the practice their yin, they decide they want to do it after vinyasa because they know that their muscles are more built. Well, yes, now your muscles are more flexible, so your body thinks you can stay in a position much longer, but it's not going to give you a stress signal as if your muscles were cool. So you have to remember, when you practice, the muscles must be cool so they don't steal the stressing away from the deeper tissues. We want the focus on the deeper tissues, not the muscles in yin. That's the biggest difference. So like I said, either early in the morning, right when you get up, I have two people that I know, the first thing they do when they prop up in the morning, they take a big deep breath and they go into folded caterpillar in their bed for a few minutes before they even get up. That's one of their things that they like to do because they have kids. They don't have time to do a practice in the morning, but she wants that intention of peace for 5 minutes before she starts her day. Beautiful. Still a yin practice in my eyes. And then they say later in the evening before you go to bed. I will say your yin practice for each, it might take some give and take, because for me, yin at night, some asanas, depending on the day, will get me going. Like I'll get a little jazzed. So I tend to practice all of my yoga in the morning, because sometimes if I practice yoga at night, I get more energy even when the intention is to calm down, but something might have released or things like that. But for some people who are night owls, they like doing their night practice for sure. So either works. Just again, make sure the muscles become cool so they're not too warm. It's really funny. So they tell you to specifically practice in the spring or summer to bring in that yin coolness. So a lot of people are going to be feeling called to yin right now because this is a lot of heat. This is a lot of movement this time of year. Same with spring. So they say those are the times to practice it. And I say, you practice it all the time, because all we do is live a young lifestyle anymore. So anytime is good. When life becomes very hectic after a long trip, or I love this because I know in some of the books they tell you not to practice yoga while you have your period. They encourage it in yin. It will help with cramps, and I'm speaking the truth. It helps with cramps. It helps with people relaxing more. It also, I know this sounds weird, but to get into a little bit of physical things. So I know with a lot of women, everybody has a different type of flow, whether it's heavy, light, long, short. I have noticed personally, the more I've practiced yin, I actually get it done quicker. So like I noticed that before I used to get it for like 7 to 8 days. And the more I started practicing yoga, I only get it for like 3 days now. So I'm thinking it also has to do with like your flow, has to do with obviously the tightness in the body in between the fascia. So with your organs as well. And I just think it's just easier if you can totally relax that pelvic floor. I just think things are going to move a lot easier. This does not apply to men, obviously, but menstrual cycle, I'm going to tell everybody to practice yin. That's my thing. It's like, think about it. Yin is the moon, and you're in your flow of the moon when it's that time of month. So it is like legit the perfect practice. Let's see. Moving energy, where's that? Don't skip it. All right, modern yinsters. Pages. There we go. So what happened? All right. Just some few things. So before people practice, this is all in the book, so take your notes, but I'm just letting you know, don't write rampantly because it's totally in the book. So before you practice, it says, if you are pregnant or have serious health concerns, joint injury, recent surgery, epilepsy, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, just be sure to discuss your intention to the yoga practice with your healthcare provider. I am huge on this. I don't like when people come to me. I won't say I don't like it. I love that people come to me, but I don't like when they come in and they think I'm a doctor as well. So a lot of people will come in and be like, all right, well, I've had this surgery, this surgery, this surgery. And I'm like, that's great. Do I know what that all means? Absolutely. Am I going to do anything with you until I get a doctor's note? Nope. Because I want to make sure you've been doing your physical therapy that they suggest. I want to make sure that you're actually doing something. I can't take someone fresh out of surgery because they want to start doing yoga because they think it's going to help speed the process along or things like that. So for me, a lot of people want to come in and practice these things at those times, and that's totally fine. Just check in with your doctor. I do a whole workshop with Yin with pregnancy. So it is great for pregnant people because unfortunately they're only allowed to lay, well, they feel like they can only lay a certain way, things like that. So the Yin practice really helps them also open that area to make birth a little easier. So Yin practice is great for people that are pregnant. I always tell people come in clean when you practice, make sure you don't have any like smelliness on you, things like that, because I know a lot of people like to spray themselves, but just for everybody else, sometimes that stuff will even help you not deepen your practice because your nose sensory is going, ooh, smell that, but are you really deeply breathing when you're smelling? Most likely not. So if you're doing deep breath, I can't smell anything because I have such a powerful breath work now. And you want that. You don't want distractions, things like that. Same thing with the practice of any time. Just don't eat anything for 1 to 2 hours beforehand. It's a little easier with Yin. Obviously, you can have an hour and then just make sure you're not crunching into your stomach for the first part of practice probably. But I would always tell people that no big meals for 3 hours before. But like 1 to 2 hours after it, you should be all right. Just gauge your digestion system because everybody's different. Obviously, same thing, empty your bowels, do your little ritual, make sure you're clean, whatever that may be. I'm not the person that's going to tell you to shower every 5 minutes, things like that. Whatever you need to clean. So whether it be your energy field or your physical body or your space, just the space you're practicing in. Let's see. This is super important. I always practice Yin every day with intention. But I tell people, if you've had a really straining physical day, I would cut your Yin practice pretty short. I wouldn't sit there and go in for an hour if you've had a physically, mentally, emotional straining day, because sitting like that, they're not going to be able to. I'm like that. If I've got too much going on that day, I've been practicing Yin for almost 10 years. I'll be in butterfly and I'm like, not feeling it. Like, I just want to get up. So it's like gauging that as well. So if you're feeling physically exhausted, Yin is okay, but I'm going to say stick your legs up the wall. That'll be my Yin. Stick your legs up the wall so you can go to sleep earlier and just practice some breath work. And half time, those people just fall asleep with their legs up the wall anyway. Then just make sure you're not practicing in direct sunlight like usual. That's, I would think, common sense for a lot of people, but I know people love their sun. Just if you're doing anything physical in the sun a lot longer, you can breath and it'll just could make you physically exhausted. I'm weird about this. I know a lot of other people aren't. I don't like people wearing watches in yoga. That's an energy thing because I feel like something's still moving on you when you're trying to get everything to move on your own. So I'm one of those weird people. Oh, you can keep your crystals on if you want, like rings, like as long as you can practice, that's fine. I'm just big on the movement on the watch thing because I just think there's magnets in there and I think it can throw your energy flow off. I know some people think I'm a little crazy with that, but I'm not a watch fan. Even when I do energy work on people, I'm like, you gotta take your watch off. And they're like, anything else? And I'm like, nope, just the watch. So, and that's, and that's what would make you comfortable too. Because the other thing is that I'm famous for throwing blankets on people when they're in certain asanas because their body temperature goes down and then it gets caught on stuff. I'm not trying to get caught in your earrings or any of your jewelry. I obviously have a ton, so I don't want people throwing things on me. But yeah, I would always say anything that's like wristwatches and your glasses. Unless someone is super, super blind, I would tell them as long as they're comfortable sitting in the asana and they only have to do this to see what I'm showing them, just anything that can like take from distraction, I'd say get rid of it. Loose and comfortable clothing in Yin because people's body temperature definitely drops. People fall asleep in Yin. I mean, it happens. So and that's a compliment to me. I'm like, you don't fall asleep in my class, obviously you're feeling super chill. So to me, I just tell people, make sure they wear loose clothing, but sometimes I tell people to wear pants because it can get cold, like if you're that relaxed. That's just natural with your body regulation when you're not stressed. You will generate internal heat with the breath, but you still might be cool. So cushions, padding, blocks, blankets. Anybody comes into my yin class, if they have mats, what I used to do was I would set up my space. So I always never took more than 10 people because I felt like I didn't feel like I was focusing on enough if I took more than 10. So when they would come in, 10 yoga mats would be set up. They would have a big bolster, a small bolster, a blanket, and 2 blocks, and sometimes a strap if I was going to do some like end stretching with them if I had an older community. But I would have that set up for them. Or when they come in, make sure they have it all, because you know some people are going to be like, I don't need this. And it's like, okay, well, this is how I set up. Just in case you need the blanket, it's there. Or just in case you need the block, it's there. So, and sometimes I won't even give people a choice. I'll tell everybody to prop, and then I tell them to remove as they feel better. So that's more of the empowerment I get through Yin as well. So, and obviously just remove obstacles that are going to bother people. So make sure their phones are off and out of the room. Make sure that if they have a space that they're not going to get distracted. I'm guilty. I do yin yoga and my dog likes to crawl and fall asleep on me. Probably not what I would suggest to other people, but I love it. So you're not supposed to really have that happen, but it happens here. So, and then also avoid like normal things like the drafts and cold flowing air, because it's definitely going to make people feel a little bit more shivery if it's like that. Woo! All right, an hour and 15 minutes. You rocking, girl.
You're rocking.
I just like, this just gets me so pumped. I can't wait till other people see this video. I'm like this all the time too. All right, so all of those above is practiced in your, like, whatever you think you need. Now, some people are gonna, I love it. I'm a huge crystal person. Not everybody is. So sometimes I even bring that to practice, and in Shavasana, I like line crystals on me and things like that. So it's like just knowing what you like, you can suggest it to other people, but also just know the regular run of it. Like, don't sit there and put crystals all over you while we're doing our practice, because you're going to forget, you're going to get up, and they're going to fall off and break most likely. So it's just finding that space for people for sure. They call it the 3 tattvas of Yin Yoga. So this is our intention of the practice, which would be, the first thing is come into the pose at an appropriate length. So to me, I tell people to go down, find your edge, and then come off a little. That's me as the appropriate length and the appropriate depth. Then make your resolve to stay still. People fidget so much in Yin in the beginning sometimes, especially if they're new to it. And the thing that will just make your heart smile after a while is that person who was so fidgety when they first came in is going to be the first student to go out on you in these poses then. So it's like having that intention. So making sure that they stay still. Now, it's different if you feel pain and you need to come out. That's different. And then hold the pose for time. So come into the pose, find your depth, resolve to remain still, and then hold the pose for time. And like I said, the time is going to be dependent upon the pose, what we're doing, all of that good stuff. So if you remember that these 3 principles while you practice, it's going to simplify everything for people. It's literally find your edge, back off, breathe into the stillness, and remember your intention. And intention in yoga for me is very important, because I feel like a lot of us are normal, and when we get still, our mind starts going or it starts floating. It's not every day, but it happens because we're human, and that is normal to happen. So what I tell everybody is when you go to find that spot, let people play with their edge. So a lot of times I will, in the beginning of any class, I will talk about Goldilocks, because that's actually in the book. So the Goldilocks story, she went, one was too hot, one was too cold, and then the one was perfect. That's what we want. If it's hot, it means it's owie. So let's back it off. But if you're not feeling anything, or you're just like, oh, because I hear people say this a lot, I don't feel anything right when we get into the pose. And I go, that's okay. And I said, just breathe into this space. Because the goal of Yin eventually is if you are that loose and open, you should be able to lay on the floor without props and hold butterfly for like 15 minutes. That's a goal for some people. So I tell people, for people to find their edge, it does take a minute. So sometimes I will talk about that in the beginning of class. I say, just remember this during our practice today, we're looking for our edge, not the final cut. And people are like, whoa. And it's like, I'm going to show you what it looks like. And I have also noticed as I teach now, I tend to show it from the littlest standpoint. So with all the props, and then I work my way up. Because for me, in the front of the class, I have found this. People seem to get intimidated when I get into my yin poses because I have practiced for so long. And this is just like hatha. So people are like, whoa, I can't get into that. You absolutely can. But I looked like you 10 years ago. So I was all propped up. I had both blocks under my hips for pigeon. I had a blanket under the front leg. And even for under my knee, because my knee came up. And now I can do the 90-degree angle and be flat on the floor with my hips square. That did not happen overnight. And I think a lot of people, when you show the asana and you do that, they're like, whoa, I don't want people to feel that way with me. So for me, I start off, and I usually do the baby version up front. Now, this is something I do suggest to teachers because I want you to be able to show them where to go, but I also want you to be able to teach something even though you can do it. I'm really big on staying humble when we practice these things because the humbleness comes in and it attracts more clients. If it's something that you're doing to show off in the front of the classroom, and I hate to say this, there are teachers like that out there, but they do like to do their practice up there, and it's more of like showing people like, let's do this. You can get there. You can get there. You are never going to hear me say that. I am never, ever, ever, ever going to tell somebody that they're going to get into my pigeon because I know anatomically they may never be able to. This is where the men hips versus the women hips come big into play. And I think the reason I got so strict with hatha people is because I've learned so much from yin. So I tell people that they need to find the edge and let them play with it. So make sure when you get in there, tell them, go forward, walk yourself down, stay on your hands, down to the forearms, and then maybe down to the ground with your forehead to hands. Now, these are the steps and the goals to get to, but I will notice as I say that, people are just gonna go, okay, okay. And they just go for it. And then it's like, no. So I usually prop myself up so I look like I'm in the beginner pose as well, but I will show them what the ultimate goal is. So I say that helps with letting them learn their Goldilocks position, because if you show someone pigeon and you're up there in your beautiful pigeon, all of your points are connected to the floor and you're like, okay, we're gonna hold this for 4 minutes. Someone in that classroom is gonna look at you and go, no, we are not. I've actually had that happen, and I love it because I love when people get like that because they're like, no way. And I'm like, all right. Yin is more interactive to me because like once we go from pose to pose, I do take the time to make sure everybody found their edge. That is one thing I will do. How you guys feel? Do you feel like you're almost at your edge? Awesome. As you breathe, you can remove props if you would like, or just breathe in this space. So next time, it might release and you might not need the props. But my big thing with the hatha community, I hear this with a lot of people. You can do this. You'll get there one day. If someone has scoliosis, they're never going to be able to bend their back a certain way and grab their foot and bring it up. But if you didn't know they had scoliosis and you're giving them this idea that they can do something that physically, like anatomically, is probably not going to happen, you just made disappointment in their head. You just made them feel like they can't get somewhere. And the whole point of yoga is for all of us to unite and know that every single one of us has a different body. Every single one of us isn't going to take the same path to get somewhere. And I think a lot of us forget that. And I think that's where people get a little confused. So work with them and let them find their edge. Because just telling someone to find their edge, they're going to be like, or they're going to be like, I don't feel anything. And I'm like, okay, well, if you stay in that asana for 5 minutes and keep deep breathing, you're going to feel something. You are. It's proven because I felt that way once I started deepening my yin practice. It just means I got to hold it longer. So it's going to start with you at 3 minutes and having your struggles maybe, and then you're going to work your way up to 5 and feeling like it's nothing. All right, well now I can move to 7, because I guarantee you your body's going, oh, I've been used to you holding this for 5 for like months. Those next 2 minutes when I go for it, my body's got to start talking to me. Oh, we're doing this for 7 now? But now I deepen my practice and we can go further. It's that whole, the patience and the slowness wins the race. The tortoise won the race. That's all I can say about Yin. Is also, I have noticed a lot of people who are coming to me now saying that their Hatha practice has completely transformed since they've been doing Yin. And I go, well, yeah, because we're targeting other areas and loosening things up. One big thing I've noticed with people is head to knee pose. So a lot of people who are doing their hips and getting all that stuff, they're able to bring this up now and bring it right in, which they were never able to do before. But that's because there was tightness in their hips somewhere, and finally in Yin it released. So the big thing in Yin is we don't use our body to get into a pose. We use the pose to get into our body. This is where that self-empowerment, self-healing thing comes in. So don't use the body to get into the pose. Use the pose to get into the body. This is where that self-healer goes off. So I'm in butterfly. This is great. Oh, I can feel butterfly. All right, bring it down to the ground. Whoop, yeah. Oh, no, not going past there. Awesome. You just learned. So now back off a little and start breathing, because that is going to help you decipher your body code immediately. I am never going to be able to do some asanas because of my anatomy and physiology. Everybody's like that, whether they have missing muscle, whether they just have a tight muscle that is just not going to release. Maybe they're missing a certain muscle in their body, which can happen, or a bone, a muscle or a bone. There are ones that don't develop in other people. But I will tell you, somebody who's going to come into Yin, they're going to be like, I want to loosen my body up. The most success I have seen in Yin in my area of the world is with construction workers. So people who are constantly leaning over and not bending their legs. So they're having a lot of back injuries. So for me, obviously I need a doctor's note because I don't want to make sure they don't have an impinged nerve or anything. But knowing how to prop people in a position from Yin is going to help them realize that they can do yoga and that there is an alternative, because a lot of these guys go and the doctor just gives them medicine. Well, you can go to a chiropractor and blah, 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 and people aren't going to be willing to do that. So finding the edge for those people is actually going to help them realize where the pain is. And then once they're like, oh my God, I'm feeling this so in my low back, I can look right at them and go, because you're not bending your knees when you lift. And then a light bulb goes on. Someone could tell them that all day. Until they physically feel it, it isn't going to click. So that is my favorite thing about Yin Yoga, because we're using it to learn about ourselves. When you resolve, so you're going to hear the word resolve a lot. I do a little bit of, you will get meditations for the end of day as well. So I talk about your resolve. It's a fancy word for intention, just so you know. So resolve and intention are both the same thing. So when you, because the one part in here, it says resolving to be still. So part of your intention should be to stay still in Yin. If I see someone fidgeting a lot, like I said, I'll go over and prop as best as I can. But sometimes I make a mental note, and this is a new thing I've done. So I have a notepad at the front of my classroom with a pen. And sometimes I get so into the practice myself with my breath work, I don't always remember everything because I get into a different space. So sometimes I will write a note down and I'll be like, person in the back row left was shaking a lot in bridge, in supported bridge. And when I went over to adjust them and asked if they were okay, they told me yes. So I'm going to make a note. And then at the end of class, I'll just walk over and I will talk to them about bridge and then maybe show them an alternative to doing something besides bridge, but I'll activate the same part of the body. Because you notice in any class, people are going to get embarrassed to ask for help in the middle of class. Don't know why, but they do. So making sure that they have that intention to be still. So stillness in the body is going to let the muscles be inactive. You are going to hear me say this as well. we are focusing on the hips. So your arms shouldn't be active, your upper back shouldn't be active, because we all have what I call stress responses in the body. So you'll think you're in a pose and you're breathing, and then all of a sudden you get up and you're like, oh, that feels weird, and you have to adjust yourself. That's totally normal, but that's because in the stillness you just went and you got to adjust. But I'm going to make sure that you're not activating anything else. I notice when I tell people to go onto their forearms, they're immediately like pushing onto the floor to make their forearms active. And I'm like, no, this is like anatomy training 101. Stack it. Stack your elbow and your wrist in the same line, and then the elbow to the shoulder. Now you might have to walk it out forward a little or walk it back. However you stack it, your muscles should still be inactive. If you are stacked correctly, your muscles should be inactive. Not saying that you won't feel them or shake, but then you need to check in and go, oh, I'm tensing up my back. So it's just having that awareness. I love this. All right, we are going to talk about this quickly. Yes. Stillness, stillness, stillness. That's all I'm going to talk about. Stillness, stillness, stillness. So stillness of the body, but stillness of the breath. I love my pranayama. So what I mean by that is we don't want the breath to be shallow or short, but we don't need to hear while people are practicing yin, okay? It's not about connecting with the ujjayi breath. I will only tell you to connect with that if you have an intention that you need to send to a certain part of your body. So it's okay to make that loud ah or a if you're working to release something in the body. Other than that, breath work should be quiet and still, because the one breath work we do practice in yin that is closely related to yin is nadi shodhana, so alternate nostril breathing. Now, this is also something I say to people: if you don't have time to do yin, you have time to do this, at least for 15 minutes. Do some breath work. It's still going to create that balance in the body. It's going to bring the yang to the yang, or yang to the yin and yin to the yang. Now, some people are going to prefer ujjayi breath, but it's a soft ujjayi breath. So that softness and still creating heat in the body is going to help people release. But like I said, it doesn't need to be deep like it would be in hatha. So most of the time when I teach breath work in yin, it's just going to be really slow, long, deep breaths, and I'm going to let them get their pattern down. In nose, same the way you would teach just yogic breath, having them go into the belly and then out of the belly, out the nose. So with the chest as well. But we want to make sure that some people, I'm guilty, I've practiced breath work for so long that if I'm doing slow, long, deep breath, all of a sudden my throat just starts going and I create ujjayi and I don't even notice it happening sometimes. But that's my body saying it needs it. So people can practice ujjayi if they're going to be loud about it. I have had to ask someone to kind of go to the back of the classroom because it was distracting for other people. I also play gentle music if I know I have loud breathers, personally. Because some people, once they have a breath work down, that's what they want to work with. So the whole thing about breath work is just quiet and still. You can practice nadi shodhana with them before practice, before the physical practice. You can practice it after, before going into shavasana. You can literally throw nadi shodhana at any point in this practice. I actually went to a class one time. She had us do everything against the wall for like, I would say like 35 minutes. And then she made us go back to our seat intentionally. And then we practiced nadi shodhana. And then we took the rest of the practice onto the mat, which I loved. I've never been to a class like that, but I've never taught that way, but it's a way that you totally can teach. There's not any kind of rhyme or reason how you teach like within hatha, like you have to follow a pattern. You can have an intention and make class a certain way. That is also acceptable. So basically, you notice that the theme is stillness, because if we can do stillness with our breath, stillness with our body, then our mind is going to be still. It is science. That is science. That is energy. You can get your body to relax and get your heart rate to go down. You can get your breath to go into an even pattern. And then all of a sudden you're sitting there. This happens to me all the time. I get such into a place and I was like, whoa. I literally just, you feel like you got lost, but I just went into complete stillness. I let my thoughts go. All my stress went away. So this is the great thing, because in Yin, you'll notice most people aren't going to get all fired up. They do get emotional in Yin, because being still for some people is when the energy comes through in the emotions, and we're releasing from the hips where everything gets stored. So this is why we're going to hold it for some time. Let them play with it. Total side note, I do have tissues in my classroom all the time. I don't know if it's just me. It might be my energy. I tend to do this with people. People cry a lot around me because in an emotional way, like they're releasing something. But I have been in Yin Yoga classes where people just are like, why am I crying right now? And I was like, you don't need to know. Just wipe your tears and just keep breathing. So sometimes you don't need to know. It's just like, whoa, I had an emotional release. I'm one of those people. I cry about everything. So it's not always that I'm sad or mad. I just let something go and it feels great. And that's just how I release personally. Everybody's different. So one big thing is everybody's body is different. This is my bread and butter. I'm actually working on a workshop about this right now. Knowing that nobody has the same anatomical structure. So this is relating back to what I was saying before. Just because I'm going to practice something every day and I'm going to be able to go 100 times deep into it, someone could practice it their whole life and never get as deep as me. Now, this is just all about, that's how deep they can go. So some people are going to say, well, if you practice more and you do more breath work and you stretch this out more and you do that, we got to stop putting that false ideology out there, because it's just not going to happen in some people's bodies. If like guys were runners their whole life, you notice runners, so their hamstrings get tight, and it's almost like sometimes their body kind of leans forward depending on what kind of runner they are. So like their hamstrings is going to be their worst nightmare, like sitting in Yin. So for them, they may never have flat legs in staff pose, or as we call it, caterpillar. They may never have that in Yin because they have ran most of their life. Your anatomy will work with your body. It will adjust, but then realize once it's adjusted, we can release it a little, but you never may be able to get to one pose. So when people say how deep, it's still that Goldilocks thing. Hot, cold, just right. So make people move in it, because they're not noticing when you say find your edge. They're like, okay, well, what does that mean? Well, find that spot when your body starts talking to you. That's what I say. I'm like, all right, you're in butterfly. All right, guys, you can stay here, or you can start coming down to your edge. Once you feel your body start talking to you, come off a little. People are like, oh, I like that. I guess describing it that way really helps people sometimes. So it's like, where are you feeling it? Once you feel it, back off a little. Let's see. So the one thing that about how often you want to practice Yang or Yin is basically going to depend on your body. So if you're an active Hatha person, you're probably only going to need Yin like once or twice a week, okay? It is about finding your balance. So what I always say to people is when you do Yin practice, the one thing that can happen is you can cause some friction in your connective tissue, and it might not always be pleasant. So that's when they can kind of feel those crepitus, I call it, like the crunchies in their body, but it starts feeling a little painful. So I do tell people that your connective tissue is what's getting moved in Yin. So if you go too deep, you can injure yourself. It's just like you can injure a hamstring or anything else when you're in a Hatha or a Yang type of practice. So the one thing that they say is the joints. A lot of people have joint injuries and they feel like they have joint damage. So for them, always using a prop is going to have to be the way it is, because now they've had something, and after researching what they have, not going back to normal. So it's like now you have to learn to work with them so they don't get discouraged about yoga, because they think they can't do it because they have an injury or a spot of them that's not flexible, things like that. So when people ask me how much they should practice, I say whatever you feel called to it. Yin is not for everybody. Not everybody's going to like that stillness and sitting still. But for me, for a long time, yin was all I practiced. All I practiced. And I didn't notice a difference in my body, but I'm also a very young personality. So I think that did help me in my everyday. So for me, like I said to you, I throw a lot of yin in my morning practice. And like I said, I sit intentionally throughout the day. But for the most part, I tell people, like Courtney asks how often she should practice yin. She does Ashtanga. I was like 2 times a week instead of Ashtanga. And she's like, well, you know, I can't do that. And I was like, I understand that, but I'm telling you that you should, because it's going to help you a lot further in your practice. She's come a phenomenal way since all of her stuff as well. But she notices, she tells me all the time, I try to get to practice yin with her. She doesn't want to do it. There's a lot of people like that. They're like, I'd rather move. That's fine. Why is she like that? Because she's very yin right now in motherhood with her family. She's taking stillness with her family and doing intentional things with them. To me, that is a yin practice. So it's just making sure you bring that yin energy in. So like I said, it's not always about the physical body. And like I said before, it's portable. Take it anywhere. All you need for the beginning of your practice is intention and attention. So the intention for your practice of what you're looking to resolve, or a seed you want to plant, something you're manifesting, whatever your intention is going to be. And then once you have that, now we have to pay attention. So you set your manifestation, you set your resolve, whatever it may be. Now you're going to set your breath and your body ready for your practice with the attention to the body now. So you set the intention, now we have to pay attention. So once you have those set up and you're like, all right, I have my props, I have everything I need, then you do your invocation. So basically whatever you want to do, however you want to call your energy into your space, clear your space. I say yin is portable for those moments, but for the most part, find your own space. Get into your, and I feel like this about all your yoga practice. And I know that parents don't like to hear me say this. You are just as entitled to self-care as anybody else. So even if it's 30 minutes a day, do it. And even if you just sit in, like I said before, butterfly and you do a meditation, I still consider that yin. You have intention. So making sure that when you do a yin class, I always do a meditation to start. So it's going to depend on what my intention of the practice is that day. Sometimes I'll do a yin focused on hips, hamstrings, or, heart center focus, whatever I'm going to do. But then I'm going to make that meditation kind of related to it. So if I'm going to work the legs, I'm going to do a grounding meditation. If I'm going to work in the heart space, I'm going to do a heart meditation in the beginning. Just making sure that you have like a flow to your sequence. So don't go in and say, we're going to do the element of fire today. And then you just do these yin things and people are going to be like, I don't feel very fiery. Explain that you're bringing in the energy of fire to release. And there you would work the lung meridian. So you're going to be working a lot of opening the chest. So just find a way to be able to depict that to your students without maybe giving them a free lesson on Chinese medicine. Because you want to make sure that big thing you're going to hear from me. You always got to get paid for your work, even energy exchange. Always. You're going to hear me say this to everybody, because in this line, everybody wants a discount, or they want to trade, or they want to do something. And it's like, I got to eat. This is my job. So, just make sure you have that energy exchange. So then your flowiness of your
Just 1 second.
practice. Oh,
sorry.
sure.
I want to switch off my phone. I forgot before.
You're good.
Okay, I'm back.
That's all right. I just noticed my phone just blew up as well. I'm like, it's like people just know when you're doing something, right?
Yeah.
I've been sitting around all day. Nobody wanted to talk to me. And now I'm doing something. And I'm like, not again. And I'm like, oh, obviously everybody's awake, which is fine. The big thing about another thing I'm going to touch on with the yin practice, you don't have to flow. I know a big thing about hatha is like you need to flow and things like that. You can do either with yin. So I tell people you can have a flow where like you don't want them going on their back and then on their belly and then moving here. But you can. So I have seen yin practice both ways, and I'll be honest with you, neither way has really disturbed me. So it's like someone will just sit there and they'll get us into our poses and they'll be like, okay, come on out and let's get into this. But I've also been to a yin class where she props everybody up, gets everybody into their asana, and then she lets them get out of it. So even though it's like an hour-long class, she literally does 5 asanas with them because she makes them hold it and prop it, and she makes sure everybody gets into the space, and then she lets them breathe there for about 5 minutes. But there was no rhyme or reason on which pose she chose. So I went and asked her at the end of class, and she said, I do this thing where I read everybody's energy, and I just notice what student needs what pose, and I just make sure we get them all done for each student. And I was like, oh, that is great. I loved that. So I was like, all right, so it didn't flow, but she had intention. This girl needs pigeon today. That person needs bridge. So that's how she developed her yin class. And that was something I went to probably right before quarantine, as we like to call it now. But I loved her class because I tend to always be very flowy with my yin, where I'm just like, because I know people don't want to get up and like flip over all the time. But I was like, I'm going to try this. And I started doing it with my little sister the other day. And she was like, I really like this. And I was like, excellent. So both work. So just make sure you're flowing. I just would say like, just don't make it an extreme. Don't make them walk over to the wall and do a wall pose and then walk back to their mat and then walk back to the wall after 2 poses. Like do everything on the wall, then everything on the mat. That's the only flow that you really need. And then at the start of your practice, I will say that there are certain ones that you want to apply to people. I'll tell you straight up, most yin classes I go to, people start in butterfly or with the legs out with a prop, because they're going to do your breath work there and they're going to do your intention there, and you can breathe appropriately like that. So it's going to depend on where your intention is. But for me, I tell people, if you're going to start in the beginning, there's no warm up because we don't want them to be warm. Things that you can start with, maybe people aren't going to like it, but you can start it with anybody. It's always butterfly. You can go to butterfly anytime. So whether butterfly is laid back, sitting up, or coming forward, most people can prop into that, no issue, however it's going to go. Child's pose. I love starting yin in child's pose. I see a lot of people not doing this anymore, which is crazy to me. I'm like, child's pose is so important. We all think it's a resting pose. It's just like downward dog. And they're like, this is a resting pose? I'm like, I know it's not for everybody. So butterfly, child's pose, caterpillar. So your staff pose, just the legs out. And most people in yin are going to need a prop under them knees. I will tell you that right now, straight up. Put that prop under the knees. No hurting the hamstrings. I don't agree with this one, but it's in there. They say you can start in frog. And I don't know. I think a lot of people struggle with frog unless you put a bolster under them. So if you're doing bolster frog in the beginning, totally fine, which we will 100% go through this like fine nail, tooth and comb and asana workshop. But frog is not easy for anybody. I have seen one person get into frog and I love her dearly. I asked her what it was and she told me pole dance made her flexible like that. She did like pole dance for fun. And I was like, that makes so much sense because you're bending your wet legs both ways. So just knowing you need to be a little more active in the hips to get there, but it is a goal pose. But I'll tell you, some people's hips are never going to open like that if they have narrow hips. Men hips, think men hips, because women have them too. And then the last one they say you can start with is Sphinx. So what is that called in, like cobra, sorry. It's like, what's that called in Hatha? So Sphinx or cobra. Now, these are all the gentle yin poses that you can start with. My go-to is definitely child's pose and butterfly, but that's because I usually do a meditation. I would say one thing I will jump in here real quick to say is we don't adjust in yin. I'm very hands-off unless I'm propping you. So a lot of people ask me about sandbag yin. I'm sure you've seen it or heard of it as well, where they take sandbags and they put them on certain parts of your body to deepen the yin pose. Not a fan, because I don't think that that's the intention. Now, if I was in my personal practice and I needed to deepen, yeah, I would grab a sandbag. I don't know if I'd want to teach that way, because I think that people with the sandbag, it goes a lot deeper than they think, and it could be a little bit uncomfortable. So people ask if we do adjustments in yin, and my answer is usually no. I just do propping, and then you can go from there if you'd like. I have seen people, it's just, no, I'm just gonna say no. Take it all back. Just go with what I was saying. Sorry. I'm like, no, I want you to start with the very simple things, because if you don't start out simple, you're already going to intimidate somebody to go back into the classroom. So that's kind of, you're going to notice that with me, because I'm super intentional, because that was my thing when I first got into yoga. I was like, well, I'm not going to be able to do that. I'm not going. Well, I'm not going to be able to do that. I'm not going. So just making sure it starts off easily. And in every single one of those poses, even child's pose, if you're holding it for 5 minutes, some part of your body is going to start talking to you. And you're going to be like, oh, yeah, it's either going to be your upper back, it's going to be the low back, or it's going to be your knees. So it's like, depending on what child's pose you take. Because most people don't feel the effects in their hips of child's pose until they're in it for a while. But just making sure that we're finding that grounding. So anything that's really grounding in the beginning and getting them all loosey-goosey to get into it. A few more things. Oh, I love this. Sorry. Getting all excited. All right. Ocean breath. We'll talk a little pranayama now. So pranayama is the #1 thing in yin, because you obviously know I'm obsessed with pranayama already. So my thing is, if you come to my class, we're not even getting into asana. I'm making you breathe. Now, will I make you breathe laying on your back sometimes? Absolutely. But I really want to make sure that people are breathing. If you are not breathing properly in any type of form of exercise or any type of yin practice, you're never going to get where your body needs to go. End of story. If you're not supplying the oxygen and letting the energy flow into those areas, it's not going to go anywhere. So when you talk about ocean breath, that is also known as ujjayi to a lot of people, because it sounds like an ocean in the back of the throat. So ocean and ujjayi go hand in hand. So what I was saying, when you go to teach in the beginning of class, I'm really big on just slow, long, deep breaths in and out. Nice, long, and slow. So once I get that down, I will tell people, if you are familiar with ocean breath or ujjayi, you're welcome to slightly constrict the back of your throat if you're feeling you need that internal heat. I will legit say it like that, because people don't realize that that ujjayi breath is to heat up your body. Now, not always heat up the muscles, but heat up the body with intention at least. So a lot of people, as you know, in yoga, everybody's downfall, unfortunately, is breath work for the most part. So for me, I like to tell people, with intention, find the breath. If you can't find your breath, then we're not going to be able to go further in the practice. Now, if someone just wants to sit in an asana and not take slow, long, deep breaths, they're going to start feeling pain a lot quicker, or like highs in their body, hello, if they're not breathing properly. The deeper you go on that, the deeper the breath, the deeper the release. And you will hear me say that during practice as well. If you feel like you need at the end of your breath to just go before you go into another asana, do it. I tell everybody, just do it. Whatever you have to release, let it all go. So you are welcome with your whatever you want to do. So when you go to teach, just make sure you're just teaching yogic breath, if anything, just long, slow, deep breaths. Most of the time, people coming to yin, they're more likely to show up new to yin than to hatha in my research, or just working out there in the daily. And most people that do come do not know how to breathe. So that is always my first intention. And then once you get the breath work down and you kind of do the meditation, breath work, or breath work meditation, however you like to do your flow, then we start doing the asanas. So you start connecting your asanas, giving them the steps to each one. Then after that, making sure when you go to finish your asana, I always tell people it's nice to finish your last 1 or 2 asanas. Make sure they're already on their back. So when they go into Shavasana, they're literally like just able to starfish when they're done. That is one thing I will tell people. I'm a huge proponent of legs up the wall or supported, I guess I'll just call it supported waterfall. I love doing that before Shavasana because I feel like that gets people into that space to really relax. The greatest compliment to me is that I have to wake everybody up at the end of my practice. So when they get into Shavasana and they're just that blissed out because they're not snoring and they're still with me. But I find that when I wasn't doing like something on the back or waterfall, like I was still doing kind of active yin poses before Shavasana, sometimes people wouldn't settle in as well. So that's just one suggestion I like to tell people. If you're going to the finishing one, make sure that you're already on the back. Then when you go to end your practice, however you want to do it, wake them up with a bowl, just tell them it's time to come out of Shavasana, whatever it may be. Throw in a closing meditation while they wake up, whatever you'd like to do. It's a little bit more free-flowing that way. It's just asanas in the beginning, and then you can stick breath work and meditation at the beginning or end, whatever you'd like to do. Ooh, all right. Excellent. Now, since we were talking a little bit about breath work, we're going to touch on it a little bit more. So the breath work, I'm always going to tell people it's direct breathing. So when people, let me start this over. Pigeon. Most people are going to feel a lot in their hip. So they need their knee propped up. So if someone goes and they're like, I want to go deeper, and I'll be like, how's your breath? And they're like, all right, I think I could do it. I'm like, if you can keep slow, long, deep breaths, in the middle of it, remove the block, and then maybe put a blanket under. That's going to give you a little bit more deepness. Then after they get there and they say, oh, I don't think I can go any further, I will tell them to take their intention in their mind and visualize that breath going to that spot that is still speaking to them. So breathing directly into that spot. I even practice this in Hatha with people. So I tell people, I'm like, connect with your breath work. Send your breath to the place that you need it the most. Because right there, you're directing your intention. You're directing the actual prana or chi, as we call it, into the body. You're bringing in extra chi every time you breathe. So if you have that direction of that extra chi going into a spot, it is going to release quicker. So if they're having that intention, not having thoughts, just saying, I need that breath to go there, and then they keep going, it's going to release a lot quicker. This does take some practice because some people aren't visually sound. They say they can't visualize stuff like that. And I say, just like anything, it takes practice. So maybe not visualize it, but think, I breathe in through my nose to my hips. I release my hips out through my nose. So if they can't visualize, then they can talk to themselves that way as well. This way that they're directing their breathing, this is also going to help you energetically clear out your body as well. So the direct breathing is going to be however you get them to do that. Like I said, slow, long, deep breaths is the goal. If they want to go deeper, they need to breathe deeper, and then the intention of into the space. It's all about awareness. Aware that you can't go as deep, aware that you can go deep, aware that you're not feeling right in a spot, aware that you need water. All about awareness. Let's see. So they also talk about Hamsa as a meditation in Yin. They like to use that, like thinking as you breathe in, you say Ha, and as you breathe out, Sam. So Hamsam, so like that beautiful hand sign that they have up, like the protector, it's spelled the same way. But basically it's he am I and I am he. So it's connecting with what's out there and knowing that that's connected with me. That's what that meditation means. So this is a great one to add into people in the beginning. Tell them inhale, ha, exhale, sa. And like that can get people into a really deep practice as well. Because even if you're just the only one saying it in the beginning, in the front of the room, you're putting that intention out of that energy. And people, as we know, don't want to ohm in class or really talk sometimes because they get embarrassed, but let them know what it stands for. This meditation is saying, I am with you and you are with me. So it's kind of the same intention of what namaste means. I know you're the same and I honor that in you. That's what namaste means. So Hamsa is definitely one that they use a lot. So inhale Ham, exhale Sa. So, and you can use mudras in Yin as well. Total side note. Do you like your mudras? Add them in. Because here, I mean, you can relax. You're not activating your muscles. I relax like this with my hands sometimes, and I just have these connecting because I know I need that energy, or here, 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 whatever I want to do. So know that some people like to do that as well in their practice. And then you can do the Ham Sum, and then what we talked about before, we're going to do a little bit of the workshop on this tomorrow probably, but the Nadi Shodhana as well. So there are different types of breath works and meditations that they have in here to suggest that really align with Yin. But find your own. Research, make your own meditations, whatever you want to do, because you got that kind of energy in you. And it's not going to work for everybody, because just because Bernie Clark says it works for him and he loves it, doesn't mean you're going to love it. So, had to get some coconut water there. All right. But basically, the whole point of breath work in Chinese medicine, the way that the energetic flow in Chinese medicine works, as you inhale, it comes up the front of the body up to the heavens. As you exhale, it comes from the heavens down to the back of the body to the ground. They call this the cosmic orbit of energy in Chinese medicine. Energy moves up the front of the body, down the back of the body, and it is a continuous circle. So in my words, this is the way that they describe your energy field. Now, the intention of their energy of it coming up this way and down that way makes total sense to me. And just the fact that like when I want to connect, I need to align this front of the part of the body and come out of my third eye. So I need to connect here up to there. But then when they give me the messages, it's like they download it into the back of my head and all the way down into my feet. So this is kind of how I teach energy work too, knowing that the energy goes like this. When you are off or your energy is off, it might go like this and then go down, or maybe take a little knee. When you do breath work, you are empowering that cosmic orbit to take place like that. So you don't need to have that intention, but when you do the breath and you've got it down, energy's coming up and energy's going down. You're creating complete balance in your body. It's called the orbiting energy. So you can do a simple orbit where it's just the breath work, inhale, exhale, and like create it that way. You can also do a Nadi Shodhana to empower the orbit energy a little bit more. This energy is still going to flow in you while you're laying down. So a lot of times, this is a little fun secret, when you're inhaling and you're connecting with your body, when you inhale, you're going to feel what's wrong on the front side of your body. When you go to exhale is when you're going to feel the back side of your body. Now, I'm not saying that happens all the time, but once you get aligned and you start noticing these things, you're going to go, oh, wow. Yeah. So when you're feeling it, when you're inhaling, you're going to feel it in the front of the body most of the time. And when you exhale, you're going to feel it in the back. Now, the other way your energy goes, it's up and down this way, but then also just in a circular, like clockwise. Think it goes clockwise, all the way up and all the way down. So it'll probably look counterclockwise if we were on an energetic map in the back. But know that there is all this energy orbits that are going every which way. If your meridians are out of balance or you are out of balance, you're going to throw a kink into this energy orbit. And if you don't fix the kink, it starts spreading just like in the fascia. So if you don't fix the problem when you know you need to fix it, it's going to keep spreading until it gets your full on attention, and not always pleasant attention. I will have to say that, unfortunately. But when you go to practice any kind of energy, let people know. You can actually tell them that once you get deeper into practice with people. Inhale, bring the energy up the front of the body, over the head. As you exhale, release it down the back of the body, down to the feet. People love it. So it's just one of those things to add in. It's something to deepen into the yin practice eventually, which is awesome. But some people are going to have a little bit harder time getting into it than others. I will say that. So like I said, just because we can visualize doesn't mean everybody can. So we just have to work and be able to work with everybody. But finding a way to tell them to bring in that intention, whether they can see it or not. All right. Woo! All right, now that I blew through all that, any questions so far?
Yes.
Excellent.
So I have one question from a few pages of notes ago.
That's right.
When we talk about the smell and the nose, that
Yes.
you said that during practice you don't want to be distracted from anything, and that it's also about the perfumes around. That means that you don't use like essential oils or incense.
So correct. And the reason why, of course, I live in the United States of America where everything's a lawsuit. So I get a little crazier about it. I will absolutely burn a smell of intention. So like when you say incense, most people don't know this. Nag Champa, when you breathe it in, the intention of those flowers mixed together balances your chakras through your olfactory. So most incense have an energetic thing behind them. You can totally burn it during class. Just ask your students before you do it. Because some people are just so sensitive to smell. And if they don't like the smell, that's all they're going to focus on. And then they're not going to breathe properly and things like that. Now, essential oils, I always use that in Shavasana, like, because I usually give them a nice long Shavasana, or I'll burn an incense at the end of Shavasana, but I'll ask them. I'll just make sure. I'll just check in. But I just ask people when they come to my class, don't put on your Clinique Happy or your Lancome like stuff, because unfortunately, I have my opinions, but actual fragrance perfume tends to be very damaging for people who have allergies. Some people can take it no problem, no issue, but there's other people that they can't. Like as soon as they get it, they're going to get a headache, and they will let it ruin their day.
Yeah.
So that's mainly why we say not to do the sensory thing, because once you start focusing on the smell, you're not focusing on your breath, you're not focusing on that. It's different. It's different if you use it in the beginning of class too. So like, I have a bottle of oil that's called, what is it called? Console. And it just has this smell to it. And before people come in, I will ask them if they would like to come up and use an oil before their breath work. Because I am actually a big person on using oils to open up people's breathing sometimes, because they don't realize how stuck their breath is. And then I stick eucalyptus under their nose or peppermint, and they're like, whoa, that went all the way down to my stomach. And I said, so should your breath. And they're like, oh. So it can be used. We just don't want to overpower anything in the room. That's all.
Okay, clear. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Then let me check it.
It's just like, if someone was cooking. You see someone cooking and you're like,
yeah,
I want that. I don't want to do yoga anymore.
Yeah, that's true. Let me check if I have some other question. Just one moment.
Sure.
Okay. No, I think I'm done.
That's fine. And honestly, you get me for the next couple of days. So if you go to read something later, we'll start our practice. We'll start off and I'll go, what are your questions? Because I know that things are going to come up as you read and go back through your notes. So
yes,
just know that's why I was excited to do this, because I'm going to edit this out of this video, but like, I like interacting with my students. I like doing this. I'm not huge on watch my videos and then message me, because it's like, I don't know. I'm going to do it, but I'm leaving that door open for people that please ask me all the questions you need anytime. Even if it's in like 2 weeks from now when we're done training and you're like, I have questions, you can reach me. Not a problem. I'm not like that at all. I love it. We can talk yin anytime. So Yeah, so basically, just so you know what we kind of covered today, we did cover just this time right now. We covered mainly chapter 1 and chapter 2 in the book. Not everything, but mostly everything. So at any point, like I said, not reading the book from front to back all at once, but I factored in at least 5 hours of you just going through this book in this training, because you are going to keep going back to it and rereading it. So just know that this book does not need to be read by the time we're done this. This is more of your manual for when you're done and you need to like have a refresher. The only thing we didn't cover today too much was Taoism, because I go into it a little deeper another day. So what I am going to do now is I actually do have to use the restroom.
Yeah, please.
So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ask for like a 10-minute break, and then I will hop back in the classroom with you, and we will be doing like workshop. So I'm going to be showing you some of the yin poses.
Okay.
You are welcome to grab like props for yourself as well, because you know I would love you to try them while we're here. But if not, I'm going to show you everything, and it's going to be recorded. So I'm actually really excited for this, because I'm pretty crazy about the asana workshop. I like to make sure you know you're propping. So all right, perfect. All right, so I'll be back in the classroom in about 10 minutes. I'll send you a link then.
Okay, thanks. See you later.